They're going to take you. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. I will find you. I will kill you.
This is for educational use only. Our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardines, to use this as an educational material. No copyright infringement is intended, so let's get started. Good day, everyone. Today we'll be discussing a serious and deeply concerning global issue: human trafficking and human rights in migration. So these topics are interconnected and affect millions of people worldwide. To give you a better understanding, we'll walk you through 7 key questions, offering not just definitions but also real-world context and in-depth explanations. So let's begin with the first question. What is human trafficking? Human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery. It involves illegal recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of people by means such as force, deception, or coercion. The ultimate purpose is to exploit them. This exploitation can take in many forms, including forced labor, sexual exploitation, involuntary servitude, and worse, organ removal. So what makes human trafficking especially dangerous is that it strips a person's freedom and dignity, treating humans such as mere commodities. It is not just a crime, it is a severe violation of human rights that continues to grow, often hidden in plain sight.
Second, what are some examples of human trafficking? Human trafficking occurs in many environments across different sectors and affects people of all ages and backgrounds. Here are some scenarios. A woman from a rural village is promised a job as a country waitress in another country. Upon arrival, her passport is taken and she is forced into prostitution. Second, a young boy is recruited from his home, trained, and forced to fight in armed conflicts as a child soldier. Third, workers are lured into a labor abroad with contracts, only to find themselves working long hours under abusive conditions without pay and unable to leave. Children are exploited in online sexual content, filmed, and distributed globally for profit. Migrants who seek domestic work and end up trapped in homes, working day and night without pay, rest, or any legal protection. These examples show that trafficking is not limited to one setting or a type of person. It is flexible, adaptive crime that preys on vulnerability. For instance, a woman trying to work abroad as a caregiver may end up trafficked into a household where she is overworked and underpaid with no freedom to leave. In other cases, migrants are smuggled across borders and forced into unpaid labor to repay fake debts. The connection is clear. Trafficking often follows the path of migration, especially where protections are weak and oversight is minimal.
Third, what are the 3 elements of human trafficking? Human trafficking involves 3 core components. First is the act. This refers to what is done. It includes recruiting, transporting, transferring, harboring, or receiving persons. Second, the means. This details how it's done. Traffickers may use threats, force, coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, or abuse of power to control victims. Third is the purpose. This answers why it's done. For exploitation, this could be for labor, sex, slavery, or organ trade. Together, these 3 elements define human trafficking under international law. If the victim is a minor, the element of means is not required for a case to qualify as trafficking. Any exploitation of a child in these ways is automatically considered trafficking.
Fourth, what is current state of human trafficking in the Philippines? In the Philippines, human trafficking remains a significant challenge. The country serves as a source, transit, and a destination for trafficking victims. Women and children are most at risk, particularly for sexual exploitation, online abuse, and domestic servitude. With the rise of internet use, there has been a disturbing increase in online sexual exploitation of children. Poverty, lack of education, or limited economic opportunities contribute to the vulnerability of Filipinos, especially those in rural, marginalized communities.
Although the government has implemented strong anti-trafficking laws, including the Anti-Trafficking in Person Act 9208, enforcement is often weak, especially in remote areas. Corruptions, limited resources, and victim fear also hinder justice. However, there are ongoing efforts from both the government and non-governmental organizations to raise awareness, protect victims, and prosecute traffickers. There is progress, but much more work is needed.
Fifth, how is human trafficking related to migration? Migration, whether for work, safety, or better living conditions, is a natural human behavior. However, when legal migration pathways are limited or inaccessible, people often turn to irregular or risky alternatives. This is where trafficking thrives. Migrants who lack legal status are vulnerable to exploitation. Desperate for opportunities, they may trust traffickers who promise job or safe passage only to be trapped in slavery-like conditions.
So, for instance, a woman trying to work abroad as a caregiver may end up trafficked into a household where she is overworked and underpaid, with no freedom to leave. In other cases, migrants are smuggled across borders and then forced into unpaid labor to repay fake debts. The connection is clear. Trafficking often follows the path of migration, especially where protections are weak and oversight is minimal.
6. What are human rights in migration? Every person, regardless of their immigration status, has human rights. These rights include the right to life, liberty, and security. Next one is freedom from torture, slavery, and exploitation. The next one is access to basic needs like food, water, and healthcare and shelter. The next is protection from arbitrary detention, and the last one is the right to seek asylum from persecution.
These rights are protected by various international agreements such as Universal Declaration of Human Rights and International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Unfortunately, migrants often face discrimination, violence, and exclusion. Undocumented migrants in particular are hesitant to report abuses for fear of deportation. This lack of protection creates a perfect environment for traffickers to operate. Government have a legal and morally duty to uphold these rights, ensure access to justice, and treat all migrants with dignity. Human rights should never be limited by borders.
Finally, what is the impact on human trafficking on globalization? At first glance, human trafficking may seem like a localized crime, but in reality, it is deeply tied to the global economy. Traffic labor often ends up in global supply chains in industries like agriculture, construction, textiles, and even technology. When people are exploited for cheap labor, businesses gain unfair advantages, which undermines ethical companies and promotes unfair trade. Furthermore, trafficking exacerbates global inequality. It keeps poor nations trapped in cycles of poverty and dependence. While fueling mistrust and fear about migration, this fear can lead to harsher immigration policies, racial profiling, and reduced international cooperation. Human trafficking also weakens international human rights standards and creates instability.
In short, trafficking hurts not only individuals but also the broader goals of globalization, such as fairness, economic growth, and social progress. If you want a just and sustainable world, you must end human trafficking and protect rights to all migrants. In conclusion, human trafficking and human rights in migration are not separate issues. They are closely connected. Addressing one means addressing other. So together we must work to create a safer migration system, enforce stronger laws, and ensure that every person, no matter their background, is treated with dignity and respect. Thank you for your time and attention. Hope you learned a thing or two.